Hello, beloved ones. I'm Kira, sometimes known as Kira, and in this moment, I'm continuing the series on communications with the infinite and the ways that I've experienced the communications from beyond or from my highest self. For I really believe there is only one presence and one power, one consciousness that is expressing in its unique and wondrous ways in, through, and as each one of us and through all of creation. All of the many forms and ways that creative energy gets expressed are still back to a reflection of that one presence and power. So for me, when I speak of communication with the infinite, and those of you that would know it as God, those of you that would question, different forms and say, well, this one's okay, this one's not. For me, I experience that all creation is that infinite one source, that oneness, that God consciousness. It is a living stream of consciousness, and we will access and be open to that which is our particular way of receiving information. And some of us may have one way that works for us through prayer and silence. Others may have many, many ways. There are those that say, well, channeling, I'm not so sure about that. Isn't that relying on something outside of oneself? For me, it is not. There is only one source, and I am tapping into that one source and its many expressions. So if I'm channeling my highest self, or if I am channeling a light being, an ascended master, they are all a part of the one God consciousness. And it's what energy stream is most aligned for me at that moment to receive the information that I'm seeking. So I really see that we all have threads of energy consciousness, and that streams of consciousness get created, and we align with those particular vibrational frequencies. And when we do, then we receive a particular thread of information for our desired or intended purposes, really our intended purposes, because I believe we also create a life to align with an intention for our choosing our lifetime. And then we have choice, of course, free will, whether we align with the intention we created at a soul level. So when communications from the infinite come in various means, it's my opportunity, as I perceive it, to interpret that in the way that works for me and my life. What is the information? How is it informing me? What is it that how am I to let that be a living communication that transforms my life in significant and meaningful ways, that I become more of the person that I am designed to be, that I am using more of my awareness, and I'm opening to an expanded communication so that I can live a different kind of life that is a blessing, not only to myself, but to the world. For I believe every one of us here upon this planet is here as a high-level soul. I know we may talk about young souls, old souls, all of those other things, but we don't get to this planetary consciousness, in my estimation, unless we already have established the power to commune with God, to have an awareness within us. Now, it doesn't mean whether you end up translating in this lifetime as an atheist, as a right-wing Christian, or as a New Age guru. None of that really is relevant to me, because to me, it's still that one presence and one power. So what is the nugget? What is the juice within every message that is brought to us? And am I interpreting it and aligning with that message that's coming to me so that I can have a freedom within my own being, an opportunity to live more fully alive and awake and aware? Because I believe everything is harmonizing with us to take us to that next level and next level and next level of awareness. We are on an evolutionary path of the soul, at the soul helping us bring conscious awareness to lift the vibrational frequency of this planetary consciousness. So it begins individually, collectively, and to honor and acknowledge that we cannot be separate from the oneness of all life that is in everything. But we may come in this evolutionary process as an experiment to see when we don't remember the truth of what we are, of who we are, what we are, our purpose in serving here and being here, how it is that we come and align. And so the messages of the universe, the communications that come through all the different channels, are simply to help remind us. They're like touchstones along the way to help us go, oh, this is the path, this is the path. Oh, this is who I am. I had forgotten for a moment, and I was living out a belief in this illusion, this separation, this experience out here, not remembering I am that consciousness and presence of the God essence. So any message, its whole intent is to create that awareness, and for me to acknowledge and live from the gifts that have been given to me as a God essence, as a presence for spirit here on this earth. And we each have a unique imprint, an encoding with different gifts. So as we're looking at the communications that we receive, instead of doubting or fearing them or saying, well, that one's okay and that one's not, in judgment, which is the nature of the mind on this planet, we can say, what's the information? What is informing me? How is it informing me? What am I to do with this message and this information? This isn't about, oh, I take this and now I become arrogant. Or it isn't, oh, I take this and I use it in some way against others. It's simply to awaken and enliven and lift my consciousness so I become a greater living presence of the divine. And for me, that's the nature of all communications from spirit, from the infinite. So as I share things that have come to me over time and experiences that I have, for me, the knowledge and the wisdom are great, but they only become a living essence when I have an experience of that in my own being. So I can have all kinds of knowledge, book knowledge, learning from others, and courses I've taken and studies I've done. But what has truly informed me at the level of soul, at the level of being, that I'm bringing forth in these messages, and I'm sharing with you because it's the experience that I speak from, the experience that I gained. And maybe that experience happened many, many years ago, but it's taken me decades to integrate and really be able to take that message into my being and bring it out into the world. More and more of our kids are coming in that they are in a higher vibrational frequency and less embodied in a way that has them denying their true essence and true power. Many of us in my generation were here pioneering or part of that movement over many decades, many centuries actually, we're always transforming the level of consciousness that we allow to shine its light through and as us. And as we change the frequency and we go through this process, we're bringing more and more of that into the fore. But many of us had to overcome the self-doubt, the diminishing that we have done. That the way that the ego has operated and has been taught was that, it was not, we couldn't possibly own that we are gods. We can't own that we are the universe communicating through an individual, as an individual. That the Christ consciousness is alive as us, and when we open and attune to it, that was the message that Jesus brought us, was that we have the ability to commune so completely with the infinite, with the divine, with Father God, or Abba as he saw it, or as we might say, the goddess in another tradition, or however we want to communicate that. When we commune and align with our true essence and nature, we rise into this glorious translation of the divine in our unique way, our encoding and the gifts that we're meant to bring forth. So as I share these messages, it has taken me decades to really bring them out. There have been moments of time when I have felt safe to share things and it not to be taken and interpreted and misunderstood in different ways. But the truth is, none of that's really my business. It's not my business what someone else does with the information I share. But my ability to express it and bring it forth without attachment to other people's thoughts, ideas, projections, etc., has been part of my life work. So now, as I bring these things forth and recognize how they were every message that was coming to me from all the different ways I'm talking about communicating with the infinite, have all led me to own and claim and be the presence I'm meant to be in the world. We're always a work in progress because we're always still claiming until we reach that full alignment where we are in that ascension into and living from the complete awareness. We're always working on evolving our awareness and supporting the world in its evolution. For me, I know clearly that my purpose is not this. I'm not doing it individually out of a need for me. Yes, the need is there for me, but the need is there for me because I'm here to help support a world in transition, a consciousness that is becoming aware of itself and living from a higher vibrational frequency. So everything I do in transforming myself, claiming myself, is for the purpose of bringing that consciousness into the world, because as one of us does that, it vibrates that frequency and moves the bar for others to be able to access the truth of their own being. That's what I believe Jesus Christ did. When he claimed Christ consciousness, he actually opened the way for those of us to follow and to understand what was available to us. He broke through the stratified. I think Charles Fillmore from Unity has a great quote about how Jesus broke through the stratified, we would call it crystallized, stratified consciousness, and therefore created this opening for all of us. And for me, that is the purpose of why I'm here. So I'm going to share a message today about some experiences that came through in a very powerful way and were pretty freaky for me at the time. And I still have to sit with what does that mean and how does that get interpreted, and not have that be something that means makes any one of us special. For me, we all have our special, unique gifts, and we are here to be the shining presence that we are. But if we deny ourselves, then what we're really teaching others by who we're being is denying themselves as well. And so when I was in a journey of my own evolution of consciousness, as I am now, at one point I was really struggling with, really who am I to be the one doing this and bringing forth a message of the divine, because I was in ministerial school at Unity, opening myself to know that I had never, I grew up Lutheran, but I had not been all that biblical. I hadn't been all that, but I had this awareness that I came in with at a young age. And so I was beginning to recognize the things that had occurred throughout my life, the places where I had a knowing that didn't make sense. And I didn't know how to even express it or interpret it in the world, because the world doesn't talk about those inner knowings, that awareness of energy, our connection when we become one with all that is, or we become one with something that looks like it's outside of ourselves. And yet those were my experiences. And so I was doing a lot of questioning and meditating and asking for guidance. And one of the ways that Spirit communicated with me was that it was in a dream. But in the dream, it felt as real as being here communicating with you now, or with an individual that I'm sitting in front of. Either way. In that dream, I was I was invited, or I was moved into a space, I don't know, there was a movement of, with these light beings. And these light beings were bodies of light, and yet they were recognizable energies to me. So I recognized that this was an embodiment of various archangels and masters, some of whom I was familiar with. I was doing studies both in the ministerial program and then also reading things like Keys of Enoch and other spiritual messages, because I was always drawn to study and know these things and to have an experience of these energies. So as I was brought to this, literally a round table, so to speak, of light beings, and yet I could recognize that this was Yeshua as I know him, Jesus. I knew his energy well. I knew Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene, and I knew Archangel Michael or Michael, however you wish to say that. I understood that these different energies, Saint Germain, and yet I didn't know all of their names, and yet I knew them at every level of my being. These were familiar, that we were part of one consciousness of the infinite. And as I was brought there, I was told it was time to understand my purpose. And I said, oh, okay, I would love to know my purpose and really be clear about that. Don't we all want to know that? And we're all struggling with what's my purpose. And yet I felt like I was on track of being called, and yet still wondering, who am I to be one to bring God consciousness into the world, to follow the path of Christ, not as a teaching or an idea, but an embodied living presence. And that was what I was working with and saying, I don't want to just do this as an intellectual study. I've never been that person. I'm an experiential, kinesthetic being. And I know that the only way that this really breaks through is to embody and let this be a living essence within me. It always has been. I just haven't known how to express it, how to bring it forth, or I was scared to do so. I was afraid of being fully self-expressed. It takes great courage in a world that has been one of judgment and condemnation and various things along the way. We have all these ideas about what's right, wrong, good, or bad. So here I was in that, even though I'm in ministerial school, I'm in that process of inner churning and questing. That, is this my purpose, and how does that live in me, and what is it to be a clear embodiment of the Christ, not just a teacher of an idea, and knowing that I had no clue how to really do that. And in that journey, I was brought to the council, and they are saying, it's time for you to, and I was like, great, time for you to understand your purpose. And they said, well, your purpose is to teach the Merkaba, or Merkaba. People say it different ways, Merkaba or Merkaba. Now, I had just read about the Merkaba, and had been kind of studying and trying to understand it after reading the Keys of Enoch. But I really was not versed in that particular language, terminology, understanding of that consciousness. And I said, well, I'm not sure I understand. And they said, you do. What do you think it means? And I said, well, my understanding is it is the vehicle of the Christ consciousness. It's the vibratory fields and the electromagnetic energies that unify in the field to create a vehicle to lift us in vibrational, I don't know what words I used exactly, whether I said vibrational, but to lift our energy into as a Christ consciousness. And I said, so what I really get, and I'm saying that from book learning, but what I understand is that we're here to be the Christ consciousness. And that would be what I understand that I'm there teaching. They said, that's it. That's all you need to know right now. And keep doing what you're doing. And I was like, okay, thanks. I'll do that. And I'm really grateful to know. And of course, coming back from that dream, I really didn't want to tell anybody who gets taken to the light council. What does that mean? Oh, etc. I had all those fears and doubts, and I still didn't even know much about the Merkaba, and I started studying the sacred geometry and other things, and have spent lifetime studying many of these things. And for me, it was never about specifics about how to go get all the detailed specifics. It was about an experience and living the kind of loving, divine light consciousness that would allow me to be an embodied presence of Christ. And I think that that's really the message that was coming through at that time. And so I want to share this with you. There's more to this story as it continued on at other times. There's more to many of the stories I have shared with you on these videos as I'm bringing them forth, because I have spent a lifetime in profound communication with the infinite. And so as I share these, my intent is not to say, oh, I have this and you don't. It's to say that everything is available to us in the communication with the infinite, depending upon how we choose to perceive and receive it, and whether we're open to the communications that come to us. Now, how we integrate that, it's taken me this lifetime to continue to integrate to where I'm even willing to share this story with you, and what that means. And there's another next level of it that came forth as well. And in a later time, a few years later, with the Light Council, but I will speak to that at another time. But these are my peers. These are those that I know and am familiar with, and that are supporting the journey. And for each one of us, we are part of this greater matrix of energy. And those who are operating at every level are communicating according to what we're able to receive in a given moment. So I invite you to just open to the ways that the communication from the infinite is there for you. Don't naysay it. Don't think it makes you special. Don't, all those things that we have fear of. Also, don't worry about bringing it out and sharing it with others. It is a time we're in right now to begin to claim and know ourselves more thoroughly, more powerfully, more purposely, to live the light and the consciousness that we're here to be the Christ embodiment. And that's the unified field that's happening in our time. And it requires us to be self-expressed, to bring forth the information and the messages of how the universe communicates with us, how we're taking information in, and what it means to us in the moment. I often talk with families when they're losing a loved one and say, I know that many of you have had experiences. You may not have even shared them yet. Experiences of your loved one coming to you in a dream, of smelling them, of hearing them. There's so many different ways that occurs, of having symbols show up. And I really encourage you to share those with one another, because our world has kept us away. We've put a lot of suspicion and things on this kind of awareness. And so what's resulted is it's caused us to keep it secretive, when in fact, the great gift is when we share it. And what I found was 99% of the time, maybe even 100% of the time, families had experiences. Someone in the family had the dream before the person passed. Someone felt their presence the moment of the passing. Somebody had an experience of seeing them in the room, or seeing a shimmering of light, or feeling their presence fully there. And what's happened is that we've made all those things very woo-woo and untouchable in a way, and someone who has those experiences somehow, scary. So when we begin to share and communicate those things, we normalize those experiences in our world. And it begins to then open the pathway for us to actually have those experiences, to share them, to recognize that they are normal, that the communications from all levels and dimensions in this interdimensional realm of life is available to us when we allow it, and to know it is Christ consciousness. It is divine consciousness. We don't need to condemn the person that has that experience. I think there's a lot of us in the world that lived through the times of being burned at the stake, or whatever it was, our whole family being threatened because of our psychic abilities. These abilities are not about just the psychic realms. They're about the connection to the oneness that we are, to the God essence that we are, and to communicate that essence at this time in a way that's relevant to our lives and the lives of one another. My purpose is not because I need you to know any of this information about me. What my desire is and my purpose is to help you find that Christ awareness within yourself. If you find that consciousness where you